Here's 3.10 HBCUs and Black Education. An HBCU is a historically black college or university. There are a lot of them, 107 today, all over the United States, especially on the East Coast and in the South. And those are the ones we'll be focusing on today. All of these schools exist for the same reason, which is that predominantly white institutions did not admit black students. Perhaps you recall the story of Martin Delaney and his expulsion from Harvard following protests by his white classmates. Now, it may appear that this student, excluded from mainstream education, has plenty of HBCUs to turn to, but that was not always the case. For many years, he had no other options for formal education, and that only changed in 1837 when the first school for black youth opened its doors. It is called Cheney, and it is in Pennsylvania, just outside Philadelphia. But wait, was it truly the first HBCU? Don't ask the students at Lincoln University, just a few miles further west. They'll tell you that they were the first. So which is it? Cheney or Lincoln? And what are they arguing about? It all depends on what you consider an HBCU. And Lincoln's argument kind of rides on a technicality here, but I'll let you be the judge. See, Cheney was built first, and it served students first, and they learned things there as early as 1837. What they didn't do was earn degrees, which is that piece of paper that officially proves you learned things in college. Cheney didn't start awarding these credentials until 1914, long after Lincoln became the first degree granting institution in 1854. So you decide, which is more important, the learning experience or the official credential that proves it? Or maybe you don't think either of these should count as the first HBCU because they were both founded by white Quakers. To find the first HBCU that was fully black owned and operated, we have to look to Ohio, where we find Wilberforce University. It might be named after an English abolitionist, but it was owned by the African Methodist Episcopal Church, which had in turn been founded by black Philadelphia minister Richard Allen in 1816. This made Wilberforce University the first entirely black owned and operated college in U.S. history when it was founded in 1856. All of these colleges were established before the Civil War, but the majority of HBCUs emerged after the war, and especially during Reconstruction, when the Freedmen's Bureau attempted to provide educational opportunities for freed people. In 1867, Howard University was founded in Washington, D.C., and named after Union General Oliver Otis Howard, who was placed in charge of the Freedmen's Bureau at the end of the war, and would later go on to drive a huge number of Native Americans off their land. In spite of this unfortunate name origin, Howard University is considered the best of the 107 HBCUs in the United States today. Several other HBCUs were founded during Reconstruction as well, including Morehouse College, Fisk University, and Hampton Institute. Each of these schools has a famous alumnus. Morehouse graduated Martin Luther King Jr., Fisk graduated W.E.B. Du Bois, and Hampton graduated Booker T. Washington. Hampton and Fisk epitomized the two different models of black education in the late 19th century. Hampton was a vocational industrial training school aligned with Booker T. Washington's learn a trade philosophy, while Fisk provided a more traditional liberal arts experience, what is often called higher education. The educational backgrounds of Washington and Du Bois mirror the differences in their philosophies of education. And when Booker T became the first president of the Tuskegee Institute, it quickly came to reflect his industrial job training approach. Meanwhile, in 1862, the federal government passed the Morrill Act and started giving land grants to each state to build colleges, mostly to study useful things like agriculture and industrial technology. Of course, most of these land grant schools did the thing where they don't admit black people. So in 1890, Congress passed the second Morrill Act, clarifying that the federal land provided was for black people too. The white colleges still wouldn't integrate, but they did create new schools for black students, and several more HBCUs were born. Tuskegee Institute was the most famous federal land grant HBCU. The number of HBCUs would continue to grow along with Black migration throughout the country, but this would remain the main post secondary option for Black students until the 1960s, when the Black campus movement built on the protests of the civil rights movement to make progress toward integrating the campuses of predominantly white institutions as well. But this is a story for another time. Stay tuned.